Atmanirbhar Bharat. The spirit of self reliance is what will take India forward. For long, defense manufacturing has been the function of PSUs, but now things are different. While still at a nascent stage, private manufacturers are fast catching up, and the day is not far when India will not only be Atmanirbhar in weapons and equipment, but also be a preferred partner for supplying weapons around the world. Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense, role of the private sector is the topic for our next panel discussion. I welcome Lieutenant General V.G. Khandare and Mr. Snehesh Alex Philip to the stage. Lieutenant General Vinod G. Khandare, retired, is the Principal Advisor to Ministry of Defense, Government of India. Lieutenant General Vinod Khandare was military advisor in the National Security Council Secretariat under the Prime Minister's Office 2018 to 2021. He was Director General, Defense Intelligence Agency and Deputy Chief, Integrated Defense Staff for Intelligence 2015 to 2018. Lieutenant General Kandare served in the Indian Army for nearly 4 decades. Serving in infantry, he excelled in challenging terrain sectors, operational roles in Siachen, Jammu and Kashmir, Sikkim, and Northeast region. For his exemplary service and commitment, Lieutenant General Kandare has been awarded the Sena Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Chief of Army Staff Commendation Card, and the Param Vishisht Seva Medal. Mr. Snehesh Alex Philip is a renowned journalist who has worked for newspapers, news agencies, TV, and now digitals. He had a postgraduate diploma in journalism from Asian College of Journalism. He is currently deputy editor at the Print.
Check 1, 2, 3. Fine, cool. It's working.
Yeah, it's okay.
Uh, Thank you so much. The audience is already aware of the entire dynamics of what we're discussing. But I would like to reach out to the online viewers, because while everybody here knows the dynamics, many online viewers are not really aware of what Atmanirbhar Bharat is all about, what Make in India is all about. And so today in discussion with sir, I'll be the devil's advocate. I'll be the devil's advocate in the sense that I'll speak on behalf of the forces as well as on behalf of the private sector. Before, rather than wasting time, so what is Make in India and what is Atmanirbhar Bharat? Are these two different things or are these one?
No, this is one. In fact, and it's not something new. We had started this at the time of independence itself. It's only that circumstantially we got into a rift with China where the Americans helped us. We got into that kind of an inventory. Then 65, Americans stopped helping us. So that kind of a thing where a system came into being where everything of defense got into government sector. And that is where I think we started getting left behind. And now when we talk of Atmanirbhar, this is the new form where you're looking at the private sector. And why private sector? You heard in the previous setting where Dr. Karnad very correctly said, the country has the talent, the country has the will, the country has the resources. It's you've got to synergize that with the public sector. Let the whole nation move together. So Make in India, Atmanirbhar is actually the same. And coming to it, when you say devil's advocate, we are in a samvad, so there's no devil here.
So when you say that Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat is the same, and this was a issue that was spoken about earlier also, does Make in India and Atmanirbhar mean that everything has to be manufactured here in India, or do we look at collaboration? For example, one of the example that is given is of the Gripen fighters. Gripen is known as a Swedish fighter. Now, the Saab is more of an integrator per se. The engine is from the US, the missiles come from a different system, the software on board is from a different country altogether. So can India really go ahead and start manufacturing everything here? Is that possible? Or do we need to have a more practical view of things?
We have a practical view. The fact, what is Make in India, what is Atmanirbhar, it is well translated as self reliant. When you say self reliant, you're not looking at everything being made here. Can you make it? It's not possible. If you do a very candid admission of how things stand today, you'll not be able to do everything yourself. You'll have to continue to develop your expertise to a level by identifying what are the critical components of a particular equipment piece which can be leveraged against you in a very critical stage. And to develop that technology, you will have to collaborate. You will have to have strategic partnerships. Strategic partnerships are not only geopolitical; they are even in the R&D. You have to take help of others who are way ahead of you. You got left behind. It's a candid admission. The technology has moved very fast, and technology is moving faster than what you are trying to catch up. You'll have to take advantage of your goodwill, you'll have to take advantage of your geostrategic position as well, and try and maximize what you are doing in indigenization. So, in the previous one, when General Pannu and Dr. Karnad was speaking, one very good thing came up, and that I must emphasize here. The intent of the government is to move ahead with collaboration as well. The ex DG infantry sitting here, General Mishra, he was the one responsible who went and negotiated for that AK 203. And AK 203 is something which is absolutely needed, and it is needed to be made in India. The way we have been dealing with Russia, this one is entirely different. You're going to make it here. There's no question of royalties which is being spoken of. Earlier, what was it? We were assembling, we were integrating. What Dr. Karnad said, you were integrating things here. Now you're saying, no, let's establish the manufacturing plant here, and the two countries or the two partners in that will have a relationship where profits, losses will be shared as per a percentage. It's not that you will bring in a kit, you'll assemble it, you'll keep giving royalty. There's a change. There's a change in environment, and as we keep transforming our method of doing business, this is one of the method. Even the price negotiation was done here
Yeah.
on terms which we felt was right for us. It was not that we were being dictated that, and in fact, if you go into the details, you'll realize that we made a very good deal. So that is the way we have to go ahead.
For that matter, even for the Rafale, we really did negotiate really hard. Uh, so, so when we go the Make in India way, Atmanirbhar Bharat way, the government has come out with a indigenization positive list, which I would call as an import ban list, which has various stages. But at the same time, the forces, when you speak to the forces, they keep saying that, modernization is getting impacted. So while while this whole process in the long run is going to be very profitable for us, does this impact the forces in the shorter run, especially given the fact that we are already in a standoff with China, and we also have a very active border on the western side, uh, when it comes to ATGMs, when it comes to even for the rifles for that matter.
Yeah.
So in the short term, is it affecting the forces? And if it is affecting the forces, what we can do about it?
Right. See, firstly, positive list, again, we'll have to go into the granularity of it. From August 19 till date, I think we have now 411 of these things which are supposed to be banned for imports, but the timelines are different. In each of the list, you'll see each item has a different timeline that is based on an assessment that by that particular timeline, the production will happen here.
Yeah.
And if the services need something, then that process of fast track emergent procurement has also been given to the services. And the services so far have made full use of it 4 times. And what is the immediate requirement of the services has been left to them. What is the positive list has also come from the services. So there is a kind of involvement of the user there. Alongside with that, whatever are the projects and the capabilities which are there in the private sector has also been taken into account. So there is a kind of balance which has been maintained. The services, their immediate requirement, the criticalities, there is a door open. So far in the emergent and the fast track process, we were looking at services going and getting best from where they could go. The present one, the emphasis is on domestic procurements. So again, there you see that we are shifting and not letting the private industry get killed because people are going abroad with the shopping list and coming back with everything. And then you don't change the equipment for 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
So the emergent requirement is what materializes in a matter of months. There are certain problems where people have put in the shopping list something which is not fructifying in the next few months.
Yeah.
Then obviously that is not the correct item to be put in the emergent procurement.
Okay. So before we move on to the private sector, what the private sector can do, is there anything that the forces can do? I'll give, for example, simple examples. Recently, the Kalyani group won a contract for artillery guns from a third country. Let's not get into the what kind of artillery was it or the country, but the fact is that this is a artillery gun that was tested by that country, has not been tested by armed forces. We still haven't bought anything from Kalyani group in terms of artillery. The second being is that the attacks is a joint program between the DRDO and the private industry. True private industry are there. The attacks has gone through multiple trials, multiple firing trials. A lot of test trials have taken place, which is very good. The army was very keen on this particular artillery system called the Athos, which is an Israeli one. Did the Athos also go through these similar set of trials that the attacks is going, or is attacks, because it is an indigenous product, it's been given through so much of trials? The other example that I always give is of Tombow Imaging. Tombow Imaging is a Bangalore-based company, which is into opticals, and now the army is, using their products. But the army first realized about Tombow Imaging is when they did an exercise with the Americans, and one of the army officers who was part of the exercise, he looked at the rifle and said, "Hey, lovely sight." And the Americans were the ones who told him that this is actually made in India, manufactured by an Indian company. So is there something that the forces should do? Is there a need for change? At the end of the day, be it, I might be politically completely incorrect when I say this, but our forces, to the large matter, the Air Force and the Army, love imported products.
Okay, Snehesh. Firstly, you spoke about Tomboy. The point is that matter is over.
Yeah.
Why did it happen till then was everything was coming through the ordnance factories and everything was given preference. To an extent, there was a period where nominations were taking place and the play field between the public and the private sector was absolutely unequal to a level that even a small thing like bank guarantees, the PSUs did not have to do that while the private sector had to do it. The release of the bank guarantees was another painful process. So the private sector was in a bad state. Uh, and when I say level playing field, you can actually catch me there because there was nothing level about it.
Exactly.
And we started doing things much differently. The person from MKU mentioned something today. He was a part of my contingent where we went to Nigeria together. Have you ever seen a contingent going abroad where a person from NSCS is leading an MOD contingent and you have people from the public and the private sector both? You wouldn't have seen that. How did that happen? Because somewhere in 2016, the defense minister said, how many private industries am I going to talk to? Why don't you create something known as one association? And that is where SIDM got formed. So gradually these steps have been taking place. Whom to deal with when it comes to the private sector? And believe me, the private sector is fiercely competitive. And that is the brunt faced by the service officers when the processes are going on. There are scores of letters which are addressed from the president downwards.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen like that, they are better fighters than us. It's only that they fight inside. But all the same, that is natural because they have to make profits, they have to survive. So this will happen. So now when you come to the point of what can the services do, we have to be more aware and agile of how things happen. What is it that a bureaucrat or a service officer is actually scared of? Post retirement, a CAG raid or a ED raid or whatever. All these 40 years or 30 years of unblemished record, who wants it to be compromised? That ecosystem also needs to be set right, where everything, there is a system where people with different ranks have the power to overcome or overrule what has been put on the file because of a particular reason.
Yeah.
If this kind of uh, assurance is given, and that assurance comes from the top of the government that, look, this has been in good interest of the nation, we are not going to do witch hunting towards that. So that is one part which needs to be set right, which the services cannot do. It is beyond the services. The second issue which services need to do, start from the bottom, how a proposal starts. A colonel or a lieutenant colonel would initiate, and there is due diligence which is given at each tier, and thereafter it reaches a point where the decision has to be made. There are inherent reasons where I say that our skills also need to be honed. How do you make a GSQR? Do you go through the glosses? Do you sit on a internet and then download something? Or we need to teach people how to do a problem statement framing, push it towards the environment and seek inputs to do an audit as to what is the expertise which is lying with us. We had a problem earlier, but we are addressing those problems. We have enough people now who are guiding us to say how exactly an RFP needs to be made. There are problems because such things are not taught in the regular army training. Now, obviously, army training is also undergoing a change. General Raj Shukla is here. The kind of initiative that he took, I think most of the time he was traveling, visiting academia, visiting industry. General Subrato Saab was a person, every weekend he was out in academia.
Yeah.
That was not something which was known to us. But this is an initiative which was taken to hone the skills and change the working procedure. Specifically, you mentioned about ethos and ATAGs. I was in the NSCS. I know how this entire journey has been going on. I know of two chiefs and two DGs of RT who very emphatically said, we want an Indian gun.
Yes.
Rider, it has to be developed and a proven gun, for which there is an elaborate process, and that elaborate process at times can be considered time consuming, tedious. But believe me, once that instrument or weapon is introduced in Indian Army, through this entire process of trials, no country in the world refuses to take that. They say, if this is the system where the entire trials have proved, there is a mobility trial, there is a winter trial, there is a summer trial, there is a trial based on what the industry itself has claimed.
Yeah.
If the industry has claimed that this is the range, this is the zone at which we are going to fire, this is the burst capability, we say, okay, you prove it, you said it, you prove it. If there is something wrong, come back. No issue on that. Now, whether the gun in question from abroad, whether it was put through the same trials, of course, it was put through the same trial. It was a developed gun. So it did not require that kind of time. But since we are all focused towards an Indian gun, we are giving them enough hand holding also. The gun which is being developed has a Major General retired from the artillery.
Yeah.
So that is something which, if it takes time, fine. But thereafter, the field is open. And if there are one or two countries which have absolutely agreed for it, is based on the trial that they have seen how it is happening. And that is good news for the Indian industry.
Interesting that there are a lot of changes. For example, there's a manufacturing of the C295 aircraft that is happening between the Tata Group and the Airbus. For the first time in India, the Tata Group, the Airbus, will give self-certification of the manufactured aircraft. So this is the first time that such a step would be taken. So yes, there is work being done on that front. So when it comes to private sector, everybody says that private sector is all about profits. I personally feel there's no harm in having profits. And as Bharat Karnad rightly mentioned, that profit is not a bad thing. But, is the private sector really willing to invest, not in setting up factories or assembly plants and all, but are they really investing money into research and development? Or are they happy, manufacturing or manufacturing the fuselages, various parts of systems? Or do they really need to focus on research and development at the same time?
They need to focus, but the point is that kind of amount being available to invest and that kind of an assurance that once they have research, whether that would get some returns is a question today where there is a big question mark. But at the same time, the amount that the government of India has invested in the government R&D setup,
Yeah.
the accountability and audit of that needs to be done much more. And the facilities have to be optimized by making them open, because if you set your own standards and you have your testing facilities which are given to the private sector, it would be fantastic. Why should they be running around to private testing facilities and then spending money and getting those certificates and then submitting? And in fact, in the past, some of these certificates have been found to be manipulated, which is
Yeah.
again not good news for our quality that we are going to assure the entire world. So, if it is whole of nation approach, then what is public sector and what is private sector? The amount that is being spent in the government or the public sector is also a taxpayer's money. So that should be opened. And in fact, in this Def Expo 2022, you would have seen the kind of transfer of technologies which was done to the private sector.
Private sector.
It is good news. It wasn't happening so far. There's another good thing which has happened. We are not talking of big players in this. We are talking of the smaller ones, the innovators, the startups, the MSMEs. The IDEX scheme which has come, where that 330 crores has been set aside for private sector R&D, that is which MOD is energizing. I will give you specifics. In the last short of 1 year, I think just about 6 or 8 months, you had the AI, you had the Navy, and you had the space sector. 75 indigenization challenges in each of these three.
Yeah.
I was personally involved in the two, that is the Navy and the space. Space is something which is not simple. It is not an AK-203 also. It is something which is extremely complex. There are about 5 or 6 components of that, starting from the launch to the satellite, to the payload, to the downstream, to the downlink, to the communication, and to the Earth station. And these are big components. And how do you do it? Because each part of that is highly sophisticated. So we found a solution to that. We said, okay, we will take a lead integrator in this and we'll have a number of startups joining into this. We will split that in a manner that at the end of it, we will be able to assemble them and see. And when you look at Skyroot or you look at Azista,
Yeah.
these are the firms which are being handled. There are retired military officers mentoring them. In fact, there are a number of them who are sitting in the first 2 rows who are mentoring, because one of the questions which came up was the involvement of the user from the designing stage. You have to design, you have to develop, you have to manufacture. That is IDDM. So far, if these were two separate verticals, now you find increasingly a number of people who got into this doing handholding, mentoring, start from. I know Skyroot people, I had met them as early as 2015 and they have done it. IIT Madras is doing handholding with 2 of these startups who are involved in space. And we have military officers in IIT Madras. We have a retired DG artillery who's teaching in IIT Madras.
Yeah.
So the ecosystem is getting formed. It is just that they should have got formed 50 years back. It is getting formed now. So these are the baby steps because of which this is happening.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, General. I'll now open the floor for questions from the floor. So we had the any questions there? There you go. Mike, please. Thank you.
And incidentally, he is one of the mentors.
Thank you, sir, for that. Sir, basically my interaction in a number of seminars and forums with the private sector and the PSUs is there. One lament is that there are no confirmed orders. Like supposing if an assembly line is going to be set up for a system, they are not assured of orders for the next 10 years or so. because you may give them an order initially, but the cost involved in setting up an assembly line is tremendous. So I think a kind of assurance has to be given to the private sector for a continuous supply. As a matter of fact, for a period minimum 10 years or so, sir. So, but are we actually working on this, sir?
Thank you, General Kocher. I can only tell you what I have been able to do, and in fact, you've been from ordnance, you know how the orders are placed and other things. But let me tell you, this is a live problem. How do you assure the private industry that these assembly lines, once they have been put, what is the return on their investment? I understand what you're saying. When we started doing this space issue, we introduced one part in that, the minimum ordering quantity, MOQ. The moment we did that, a large number of startups immediately came up. They came on board to say, if this is what is required, and that MOQ was our requirement. That is in addition to what they will export. So far, we were looking at our industry, and even the public sector was only looking at assured orders from the armed forces. Their order books were full. Their order books were full because obviously they had a captive audience, and that started obviously when the private industry came. There is no assured orders unless you're a part of a program. If you're a part of a program, say the 30-year submarine building program, in which you know that P-75 has 6 submarines, P-75I has another 6 submarines, that's a separate issue. But everyone is not a part of that government project, so to say. But now we have introduced that MOQ where the user has to say, this is what we have to do. So far, I have tried to do it and it has worked in the space sector. This is a good example to follow by the other services also. So assured orders will have to be done. And in one of the speeches, even the Prime Minister mentioned that NCNC trial is another bad thing, which the private sector is absolutely averse to. When you say no cost, no commitment, at least the person who's making them do it, at least give some commitment. You can't be having one way commitment. So the thinking, the thought process, the work culture will have to change. Why is that NCNC also done? The fact of the matter is, most of us field commanders do not have financial powers. And that actually starts from the Army Commander's special financial powers. So if the Army Commander is asking for an NCNC, there is still a commitment that he has something which he will order, or if he is delegating it to a field formation, it will happen. But if somebody rings up from somewhere and rings up somebody in Bombay, and these are cases which have happened, and they travel all the way to J&K or Ladakh, and then they give an NCNC, and then thereafter they're absolutely bankrupt. I know of a case where a person from southern India was asked for an NCNC trial for an assault trackway. Imagine the amount of money he spent going to deserts, and he didn't even know what a desert looks like. And he landed up in a massive loss. So that is where, when Snehesh, you ask, what do the services have to do? We have to be sensitive to a common citizen who incidentally is a businessman, but possibly is more patriotic than us. We have to understand his sensitivity as well.
Absolutely.
Is that okay? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Shashank.
May I add something, sir? No question, actually. We are constrained by not being signatories to some export control regimes in the past.
Yeah.
And now we are signatory to 3 out of 4 export control regimes. Wassenaar arrangement, the Australia group, and the MTCR. Now, NSG, we are not part of it. Now, with this Wassenaar arrangement, we'll be able to sell our weapons abroad. BrahMos is one example, Pinaka is going, and third one also, I am told something I was reading in the news, I'm just forgetting. One more item somebody has evinced interest in, now we are part of the export control regime. So 2 things are there. One is our own orders are not enough for somebody to invest so much of money. Secondly, he cannot sell export if the country hasn't bought it. He asks, is the Indian Army using it? This is one requirement. So there are two things to it. And I think we are doing well. Maybe in next 1 or 2 years, we'll have more people uh, getting things. I thought I'll add this.
Shashank, I'll add on to this. What you said is absolutely correct. Please look at what changes are coming up. In the Def Expo 2022, you had the Indian manufacturers or those Indian manufacturers with foreign partners.
Partnership.
They were the ones who had displayed their capabilities. One part is that. What was happening on the sideline? The defense ministers of Africa were there, the senior military commanders were there, the Indian Ocean region neighbor, their political or diplomatic people were there, the military people were there. So, in a way, what Shashank General Mishra says is very correct. The Indian orders may not be adequate, which means you have to open the export orders. And that can happen again. This is a word of caution. Your quality has to be absolutely world class. The time taken to deliver has to be world class. The cost has to be globally competitive. And the fourth one, which is most important, post sale satisfaction levels have to be good. We have had experience in the past where a public sector undertaking sold something, 6 major items abroad. You did not translate into Spanish language, which was the user's requirement. This kind of lack of sensitivity is not going to take us far. So we better get our act right, and if we have to sell something, then sell something like a good businessman, and then be a reliable partner. You can't wish it away and say that once I have given it, thereafter I have nothing to do with it. If you have to position people there, you have to position people there. If you have to get that thing free of cost back, you have to do it. It can't be that my order book I have delivered and that's the end of it. Wassenaar arrangement is something again extremely important. Approximately, I think 48 members there and 42. And bulk of the Asian representatives, our adversaries are not there. That is the golden opportunity which we should be taking, and we have energized that. And now is the time that in the last about 2 years or so, the MEA, the MOD have got their act right, and we are using that platform very well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Please continue.
Is there any other question? Yeah, of course.
I just want to just throw through thoughts because our
So the mic is coming, General.
Atmanirbhar piece has done so well, so we must take it to the next level. And here, see what is happening in most militaries is innovation now, where the talk is like this. I mean, you would be aware of it that people are saying that the GSQR is dead. So the private sector is saying that we will not give what the militaries want, we will give them what they can't refuse. So all this means that our process, when we talk of GSQR and all, if it is actually dead abroad, we should revisit it. Similarly for trials, you gave that example about the gun. I know that in most countries' trials, there are base trials, the rest is by simulation. But if we keep insisting, and some of the good things have happened in IDEX, we have come to single composite trials. But what we are doing that with process, we are experimenting. And if you keep experimenting with process, the problem will be that the private sector will not give orders. And I'll tell you the dangers. Why is it that military startups are not becoming unicorns? In the other space, they are becoming unicorns because of our process. So having done so well, and the Prime Minister has referred to it, if I may paraphrase him, he says Atmanirbhar Bharat is about liberating the forces of innovation, energy, enterprise from the scourge of process and procedure. Self-certification was one. So the point I'm making, it has done so well. Now we must seriously look at surgically reducing process and procedure even further if we have to take it to the next.
In fact, adding on to what General Raj Shukla has said, very senior officers are here. General Hasnain has been my boss at least twice, sir, if I remember correctly, and I have learned a lot from him. And in our military training, there is nowhere where we teach these processes. And this is where we need to bring in a change in our teaching. And I recently, sir, reached out to the Commandant Staff College, where I only requested him 1 day time period to be given to us to teach the officers how to make a problem statement which the business industry understands. I am telling them not to use adjectives. Seamless integration has no meaning for the civil industry.
Project management has no place in our.
Yes. So that is something where inwardly we have to remove these, say, deficiencies, I would say, by current standards, and we have to bring our human resource to that particular level to think the way the private industry or the public industry.
Absolutely.
So while whatever Dr. Karnad has said about the DRDO presentation, but one thing I agreed with her is about we and they, and that is about public, private. It's got to be a team effort. But to be fair to General Mishra, he did a lot as DG Infantry, including AK-203 and an exoskeleton. That is something which started during his time, out of the many things which started. And there again, what the public sector is doing and what the private sector is doing, that is that healthy competition, because of which suddenly things have started moving. So maybe this initiative of private sector has energized the public sector also. The ordnance factory corporatization is yet another step.
Yeah.
The ordnance factory corporatization happened not because the ordnance factories wanted it, it's because the users wanted it. And the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister in person gave heed to that. And that is how the whole thing, and General Subrata Saha and me, we were the two people who initiated that report. And obviously it appealed to them. So there may have been certain issues earlier, but at least the reform has started.
Absolutely.
Thank you, General Khandare and Mr. Snehesh, Alex, Philip. That was wonderful panel discussion.